Hello. This video is going to be going to more in depth about what I was speaking on in my last video, and that was how the American political system and its two parties is hurting America a lot more than it's helping America, and it's actually not democracy. It's not democratic to have a two-party system. It's not democratic to have an any-party system because, well, I'll explain at least my views and my opinion and how I perceive the system as being. But first, I'm going to take us back to the French Revolution, and the people who invented, or the people who revolted during the French Revolution, and the people that were setting up the new constitutions, they made it clear that if political parties, political groupings, political ideas start to form, and people start to come together for an idea, then you need to scrap the Constitution and write a new one in order to not allow parties to form in a democratic society, because as soon as political parties begin to form, then you start to lose democracy from the people. The people's voice start to get pushed down and start to not be heard, because all you have to do is appeal to the parties to get the power to change whatever change you want to happen. You have to convince the parties that, and not the people. So the French Revolution, they knew that when they were doing the French people, they knew this, and they strove to eradicate parties. Now, it didn't necessarily work because political parties are such a powerful force that if you can create one, then you are now able to control the people, to control the opinion of the masses, because people believe that this is the right way, because you're such a big party, it's so big, it's such a big group, like the Republicans and Democrats in the United States. They're such big parties. To the average citizen in America, it seems like, oh, these parties must be right, they can't fail, look how big they've gotten, they have so much support, they have so much longevity, they have so much power and strength that they must be right. But no, actually, that's wrong to have a parties, and especially if you only have two parties to choose from, that limits the scope of democracy from whatever the population of your country is, everyone's voice being heard, to two voices being heard. And now, you may not necessarily agree with me or believe this to be true, but I certainly see this happening. Is when you have the two-party system like America has, it limits the discourse, it limits the dialogue, and I was mentioning this in my last video, speaking on why we should avoid giving attention to Donald Trump. But anyways, when you have Donald Trump saying certain things, like he wants to build a wall, then you force the other Republicans to comment on that too. You even force the Democrats to comment on that too, and you bring the discourse, you bring the dialogue from where it should be down and lower it and condense it and make it small until you're only talking about very specific few marginal things. And that's not democratic. You're not getting the voice of the people, are not being heard anymore. Instead of instead of the government owing justice to the people, the people now owe justice to the parties. People now owe their vote, they now owe their mind, they now owe everything to the parties. And that's why I feel that the two-party system in America is actually hurting that country much more than it's helping them. And independents need to start rising up, and I'm sure there's a lot more that has to happen, but I feel like as long as Americans start to look at that, the idea of a two-party system, that it might actually be hurting much more than it's helping, and start to think of ideas of how to get rid of the two parties, or to try to change the parties and to open them up, then you'll start to see better change in America, and you start to see real change in America. And it needs to come from the grassroots level, because if the people's voices are no longer being heard, you need to take the power away from the politicians, because now all the politicians have to do is just appeal to other politicians in their party in order to make things happen or to get elected, instead of having to appeal to people who actually truly hold the power. But they've taken the power away from people by putting it into the hands of the party politicians. And that's why I feel that it's no longer a democratic system. It might seem democratic on paper or in the Constitution, or to an outsider's perspective. Even to an insider's perspective, it might seem democratic. But I think Noam Chomsky talks about this, and I don't necessarily agree with everything Chomsky says, but I do think he has a valid point when he says that this limits the dialogue, it limits the discussion. It takes it from maybe 100 points of discussion to 3 points of discussion, and then the 97 points aren't being heard anymore, and then you marginalize minority groups, you marginalize interest groups, you marginalize groups that are trying to get their voice heard, and whose voices should be heard in a true democratic society, but they're not being heard. And that's why I feel the two-party system in America hurts it more than it helps it. And thank you.